Hey there, it's John Ray. Hey, am I live? Okay. It's John Ray, and today I wanted to talk about big feelings and when they come up in the workplace or when you get an email or a text message that triggers you, how you can respond with some of that big energy or those big feelings that come up. And, you know, I think it's natural for us to feel something when we have an expectation for how we want things to go, and then they go differently. And that could be because we get an email of somebody being critical, or it could be because somebody sends us a text message that kind of shifts our whole paradigm. um, the phrase text message breakup comes to mind. That was an old video in the early 2000s, but that's the type of thing. Like when somebody gives you that type of information, and it kind of just gets injected into your day via a text, email, or other means of communication, you're not really able to respond because there's nobody there. Like you're just sitting with the email or text that came in, and you're kind of stewing in all of that energy and discomfort that comes from having an expectation broken. And it's not necessarily the other person's fault. And even if it is their fault, our power is being able to own our own feelings without having to project them forward. And today I had a couple of different emails come in that were not overly critical, but they were outside of, hey, everything's perfect. And so they just brought up some feelings. And of course, I recognize that my feelings about those emails that came in today aren't even really about those emails. They're about, something else that, is happening in my nervous system, some past trauma that, it is waiting for release. And also maybe some good information that would be relevant to me. And so my my two go-tos when I get an angry email are to just totally blast that person. If I'm completely unconscious in the moment, I'll send a nasty email. Or the other option that I do is I will act passive aggressively and basically, send an email that's the equivalent of like, fine, you know, I don't need you. And while that gets me in less trouble than maybe totally blasting someone, I still am being dishonest to myself about the energy that's happening in my body. And I'm not looking at the opportunity in that moment to strengthen my emotional channels. And so today I just wanted to kind of walk through the mindfulness exercise that I use when these big feelings come up. And I still have some of those feelings because, I'm not always able to just stop my day and do a meditation. And so then I'll kind of table it or make a note about it and revisit some of those feelings at the end of the day. And I try to never go to bed with feelings that have been unprocessed. I also try to never start my day or pick up my phone if I wake up and have feelings, because there's a lot that happens in our dreamscape that is helping release emotional energy. And so if we can have a mindfulness practice at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day, we can really process out a lot of that energy, and we can stop needing external things to change for us to feel good about ourselves. And so what that looks like for me is I just kind of get comfortable, and I really just do a body scan. So maybe I'll take a couple of deep breaths. And because there were a couple of critical things or kind of red flags that showed up in my inbox today, I just kind of allow that to play itself out, and I tune back into the energetic and emotional response that I had to that. And I can still feel some of that big energy in my chest, a little bit in my stomach, somewhat in my forehead. And so I just allow that to be there and I notice what's happening in my body. And the more that we do these mindfulness practices, the more that we're able to really tune into the subtle energy response that's there and deal with this at a level before it has to manifest as some kind of behavior or language or action. We can deal with it in the subtlest state, which is that energetic emotional state. And so I'm just aware that there's some big energy. It feels almost like a pressure in my chest. And a lot of times when we feel that kind of discomfort, the tendency can be to try to get out of that discomfort by distracting ourselves, by, maybe watching a bunch of YouTube videos or diving into a Netflix series or eating something, drinking, going out somewhere. Not all of those things are bad things, but we want to make sure that we're doing those things consciously and not as a way to distract and numb out. And so, if we can just be present with some of those big feelings, even though if they're uncomfortable, it's almost like when we're pushing blood into our muscles during a workout. It's somewhat uncomfortable to do a really intense workout because we're filling our muscles with blood and hormones. But in that stretching of the muscles and that tearing of the muscles, there's a repair that happens, and that's how we get stronger. And our emotional system really is not that different. So, to do that work, we just tune into whatever sensation is happening in the body. And we can get into those feelings by thinking about that email, thinking about that text message that came in, how angry we are. And if instead of needing the other person to change or the situation to change, we just own those feelings and we let them play out. We use it as a catalyst to grow our nervous system, to grow the emotional channels. And what this does is it gives us more capacity to listen. What was in that email or that text message that was true? Is there something that we can learn from it that will allow us to grow? Something that will give us a little bit more awareness moving forward on how we handle certain situations. In anger management classes, they teach us to count to 10, but sometimes we have to count higher than that. But even counting to 10 gives us enough space to kind of witness what's happening so that we're not immediately reacting. What we want to do is consciously respond. And I'm not always great at this, but I learn and I don't beat myself up if I make a mistake or if I react unconsciously. I just sit and feel my feelings about that. And I notice what sensations are showing up in the body. And so let's just sit in silence together for a little bit and notice what's happening in our body. Watch some of that energy express, see where it wants to move. And eventually, those big feelings will subside. And there's a kind of relief when that happens. But it starts by just noticing the sensations in our body. It's so easy to make somebody else wrong. And that's the easy way out. When we make somebody else wrong, we're not owning our own feelings about the situation. We're not owning about what we're contributing to the situation. And so the opportunity is to sit with big feelings or sensations until they've passed and fully processed. And then from that more clear headed, less emotionally charged place, we have a more accurate perception of the choices and options and decisions that are available to us. And we can see the full spectrum of choices a little bit more clearly and maybe choose something that hopefully has better ramifications than had we just blasted off at that person. And this isn't about trying to get the feeling to go away. We just want to allow it to be there, and we want to be okay if it never goes away. Sometimes the feeling we need to feel is that the feeling is never going to go away. And that's the first layer of the onion that we have to get through, is that resistance. Because if we are feeling that the feeling's never going to go away, we're kind of resisting the experience. And we're making it wrong that the feeling would never go away. And so, just like a child, we want to give that feeling or that sensation in our body permission to play or dance or express however they need to express. And just like when a toddler falls down, starts crying, if we just give them a little bead, they'll get that out of their system and then they're fine again. And that's actually a good representation of how we can process our own feelings. So just notice what's happening in your body. If you're having a thought or multiple thoughts, ask yourself how you feel about that and where you feel that thought in your body. And see if you can find it as a sensation in the body. The mind is going to want to make a judgment call about that sensation. But if we can get fully present with the sensation itself and just allow it to be there, sometimes I'll visualize a flower opening over the spot where the energetic sensation is, because I just want to relax into that area of my body and allow that energy to release in whatever timing it wants to release. And maybe it's not time for it to release, but I can still nurture that area of my body with the light of my consciousness, which is my attention. There's so much power in our focus. And when we direct it towards the sensations that we have in our body, it can be a very healing and therapeutic exercise. So notice what's happening in your body. Put your attention on that sensation wherever it is. And let's just sit in silence for a bit. And if you're really angry about that email or text message, you might have some thoughts that come in about scenarios that you could play out, revenge that you could take. If that happens, that's okay. Find how that feels in your body. Ask your body, where do you feel that revenge? Where does that want to show up in your body? And instead of plotting the revenge intellectually, we deal with the energetic structure of it, the emotional structure of it in our body. We just lend our attention there. We let it burn as bright as it wants to. And eventually it will burn itself out and it will transmute itself into a different flavor of creative potential that is more holistically serving of all parties. But it just starts with taking a pause and building out the space to notice what's happening in your body and recognizing that that feeling will go away if you place your attention on it for a long enough period of time. No feeling lasts forever. And if you have a chronic feeling that comes up again and again and again, the opportunity is to grow the pipes of your nervous system to be able to have more capacity for those types of feelings. If your cup is already full of dirty water and then some more dirty water comes in, well, now you're just overflowing dirty water. That's the immediate reaction, is that you don't have any capacity to hold that dirty water and transmute it back into something clean. But with a regular mindfulness practice, as we sit with that dirty water, those big feelings that are uncomfortable and that we don't want to acknowledge, or that don't feel good for us to acknowledge, if we can just build out some space to put our attention on those every single day, what ends up happening is we build a bigger cup. We're more capable of handling more uncomfortable situations in a way that doesn't even feel uncomfortable. Because the discomfort is only too much when we hit the lip of that cup. And so if we just keep growing the cup, our body has a natural transmutation system where it will take that dirty water and it will purify it. But we have to give it the space and time to process properly. We can process these things in the moment if we're hyper present. But there's so many distractions in our world that it can sometimes be difficult to be that present. And so what works well for me is just having a mindfulness practice in the morning and in the evenings, where I just scan my body like I'm doing now. And I lend my attention and my energy and my focus to whatever sensation wants to show up in my body. And I just stay curious about it. So, right now, notice what's happening in your body. Notice what sensation is there, no matter how subtle it is. Sometimes the subtlest little twitch or itch is a portal to a big feeling that's ready to release. And we just want to pull on the thread of that sweater until it unravels. and isn't so densely packed anymore. So, right now, there's some energy in my chest, around my heart chakra. So, I'll just sit silently and notice that energy. And the mind is going to want to get out of this silence. So if you start to think or have thoughts, that's okay. Don't make those thoughts wrong. Just ask yourself, where do I feel this thought in my body? And then move your attention to that part of the body and just stay focused there. Let your attention burn out the density of that trapped emotional energy. And as those big feelings burn themselves out and die down, the manifestation that usually follows that for me is good ideas, reasoned ideas on my role in a situation, my responsibility, and how I want to show up. If it was a really angry email or an email that really triggered you, it might be helpful to scream into a pillow or write a nasty letter. You can still write the nasty email, just don't send it. Write it, get some of the discomfort out. And when the feelings have died down to the place where you can actually sit with them, process them out in the body by just noticing them in the body. Giving expression to our feelings can be a beautiful thing, but it often prevents us from growing the deeper muscles of our emotional channels, in my experience, because we're just always projecting the energy forward. We're immediately getting it out of our body and we're not letting it stew and push on the walls of our nervous system or our energy field. When we can stew in that energy a little bit, it has the same effect on our nervous system as going to the gym and lifting weights has on our muscles. We're able to hold more emotional energy. And the byproduct of that is we're just not as upset as often because we've got a bigger cup. What sensations are happening in your body? Just notice those without judgment, without resisting them, without needing them to go away. Just allowing them to be present. And as you feel through the big feelings about maybe one specific event, and you grow the size of your cup a little bit, you might recognize that other things from your day or your life start to come into your field, into your thoughts, as if to say, we're ready to release too. And so rather than pushing those thoughts away, we want to ask ourselves, where do I feel each of these in my body? And then we turn our attention to the body. And when we're really present with the energy in our body, there's really very little thought. But if a thought does pop up, it's a clue. It's pointing to some frosted energy that's ready to dethaw. And so we let the thought guide us. How do I feel about this thought? How do I feel about this scenario I just imagined? That scenario is a law of attraction event. And the purpose of it is to show you where there's trauma that has been trapped as emotional energy in your body that is now ready to release. All of life is a mirror that is triggering this release. We merely have to witness it and be aware that the process is available. You can decide if you want to believe this, but what I believe is that it is impossible for me to experience anything that I wasn't supposed to experience. And that the gift in every single moment of my life is that whatever happens in those moments is showcasing to me if there's a blockage, and if so, how to release it, because it's inspiring a feeling, and the feeling is showing me where to lend my attention to. And when I lend my attention, the trapped energy releases. That release turns back into creative potential that then allows me to operate and perform at a higher level in everything that I do. And this is a moving target. I can feel really good and optimized and clear and processed and powerful one day. And then new circumstances come up and make me feel unsure, insecure, doubtful. That's okay. Those are showing me what the reps for the day are. What is my exercise for the day? Life tells me what would be valuable to feel through. And if I will do that feeling work, I can really start to align with bigger and bigger games and opportunities and love and deeper flows of communication in my relationships and confidence in everything that I do. And yet, those are all byproducts that if I haven't felt the feelings yet, I can get attached to that outcome. And the attachment creates a kind of desperation. And if you've ever been in one of my other meditations, you know that desperation is a stinky cologne. We learned that from the mindfulness movie Super Troopers. So instead of acting in desperation, instead of acting out that lackful feeling, it's so easy to act out that lackful feeling, to act out that victimhood. But instead, we own it. We step into our sovereignty and we own our feelings. We don't make it because it's not their fault that we feel this way. We feel because we feel. There is no right or wrong. If we're feeling it, it's something that needed to release. It's something that needed to happen. It's something that we needed to examine. And if we can feel through it, it opens us up to a bigger decision space, which means there's more data points, information, and choices. And from that more empowered, fully emotionally processed place, we can make new choices in our life. And this is how our life changes. We don't just do this feelings work and just expect that everything around us is going to change. The change happens because we make new choices, because we're inspired in new ways when we do this work. But it starts by noticing the feeling that has been triggered in our body, our nervous system, and our energy field. So let's just sit in silence for a few minutes, noticing the sensation in our body. Our body has a ton of useful information that allow us to make better decisions, but we have to tune into it. Some of it is actual physical signals. What is my heart doing? Do I feel sluggish? Is there something I could change about my diet? The amount of coffee that I'm bringing in? Only you are going to know what the right solution for you is, ultimately. Other people can give you signposts, they can give you noodles to throw against the wall. But when you feel with the discomfort in your body, when you sit with it, a clarity will eventually come online, and you'll know what the next step for you is. And it may be to go find your own path and turn this video off and never come back. Or maybe you're finding something valuable here and you're learning something about yourself as you tune into yourself. You know what you need at any moment in time, and it's totally appropriate to own the path that you're on. For many years, I did not want to be conscious. I liked partying. I liked blacking myself out every night. I liked the adventure of that. Now, there was a desperation in that I wasn't even aware of. But there was also a deep sense of curiosity that I had to explore. And so when the right time for you to do whatever work it is you need to do. Whatever your therapy is. Do you feel good about how you're showing up in your relationships, in your work, in your finances, your conversations? If what you're doing is working, then just keep doing what you're doing. But the beauty of life is that when there's some discomfort, whether that's small discomfort or massive grief, there's always a transmutational experience that trauma can catalyze if we're willing to go on that journey. And it can be heartbreaking. But if we allow the heartbreak, allow the grief, rather than resisting it and trying to shove it down, eventually that grief will subside. It will pass. It may not happen overnight. But if we're mindful about how the energy, that grief or that trauma needs to express in our body, if we're mindful of that sensation every day, if we let it inspire tears or whatever needs to come to the surface, if we need to journal angrily, swing a t-ball bat at a bag of trash. Sometimes there's too much energy to just sit with it. And so finding a healthy, safe way to express it, where we're not projecting it at anyone else, we're still owning it as our feelings, but we're creating some kind of expression for it. But that expression often can just be barely getting under the lip of the cup so that we're not overflowing. And then we're just in a space where we're easily triggered into that spot again, because the second that some dirty water comes into our cup again, now we're overflowing. So the value of being proactive with a daily mindfulness practice, where we just notice every day what's happening in our body. The value of that is that we start to drain all of the energy that was working against us, that was trapped, that was preventing us from being exuberant, that was preventing us from having focus, that was preventing us from moving forward. Feeling our feelings in this way transmutes that into battery power. And it drains the overflow cup in a way where there's just more capacity to handle whatever life throws at us. And this is the process for learning how to walk through lions' dens. We feel the fear. We find clarity, wherever that comes from for us. For some, it'll be from a higher power. Others, it will be an internal confidence. The labels really aren't important. What happens is that as we clear these emotional channels, there's clarity, there's a knowing, there's capacity. And so we don't have to back away from experiences. We don't have to back away from things that a lot of times the things we want to do feel scary. But when we have enough emotional capacity, we can feel through that fear or nervousness or anxiety. And as a conscious, sovereign being, choose to do it anyway, because we know we have the capacity, we know we have the emotional strength. And we know if we continue to be present with whatever feelings come up, that we'll always have the energy we need. We'll always have the clarity we need. And we can always make a new choice, right? We can always choose something different. And almost always in my life, when I feel stuck, I'll feel stuck for months. And then if I will finally just sit with myself and feel through some feelings, the new choice will present. I just choose something different. Other times, I've been wanting to choose something different as a way to get out of those feelings. And when I actually feel through the feelings, the thing that pops in as clarity is, oh, this is where I'm supposed to be. And now I have the capacity to meet it with courage. So I've still got a little bit of energy in my chest, and I'm just going to sit with it. You're more than welcome to join me, tune in to whatever sensation is happening in your body. But let's just sit in silence for a little bit longer. I make this work my number one priority because I know that the inspiration and the energy to do whatever I want to do or whatever I need to do comes from transmuting this trapped energy into energy that I can actually use. And so when I feel overwhelmed, if I don't feel like I have enough time to complete a project, that's when I meditate for an hour or 2 hours. Because part of this transmutation process is tapping into the ideas that literally allow us to transcend time, to find the path of least resistance, to find the idea that fixes things, or to not need to fix anything and still be able to find peace in the midst of chaos. That's the value of this work for me. And so I just sit with myself and notice what's happening in my body. When we have transmuted trauma in the body back into creative potential, my belief is that life no longer has to trigger us in that way because there's nothing left to trigger. Now, of course, there's possibly an infinite amount of flavors of trauma. So the next day it might be something different, slightly different flavor. But as I deal with each of those subtle events in their most subtle levels, what happens is I just no longer have to manifest the drama. Drama is what happens when I'm not tuned in at the most subtle level, because it's basically reality saying, hey, you're not fucking paying attention. So we had to make this big explosion over here so that you would actually look at it and feel how you feel about it and be honest and make new choices based on processing those feelings. And if we're not willing to tune in at the subtle level, reality will manifest events designed to trigger bigger and bigger feelings until it's not possible to avoid those feelings. And you may have had an experience where you were just so overwhelmed by everything happening in your life that it just broke something in you. And once the levee broke, all these feelings came to the surface. You just cried and cried and cried for weeks, months. It's happened to me. And that is life processing us, healing us. But when we resist life, that process can't happen. And so that energy just bottles up. It bottles up. It bottles up. It bottles up. Until eventually you've shook the Coke bottle so much that the lid just bursts open. And now you've sprayed everywhere. You've got a hell of a mess to clean up. But if we can just learn to tune in to these sensations happening within us at their most subtle level every day, then we can make new choices early before anything has to bubble up into a big dramatic scene. And that's how we stay on our path. That's how we stay on purpose. We tune into what's happening to us. We allow those feelings to come forth. We don't resist them. We don't try to interpret them. We don't make those feelings wrong. We just get curious about them. Where do they want to move? What do they want to do? What's their intensity? What's their temperature? What's their color? How do they sound? We become fully present with the sensations in our body. And when we do that, that energy gets to release. And in that release, we open up the number of choices that are available to us. And we become more aware of what we could choose that we haven't been choosing. And the power comes from making the choice, having the clarity and the confidence to choose what we know we need to choose. And it's not We don't choose the easy thing. The easy thing is very often an escape. It's a way to not have to feel discomfort. When our nervous system is atrophied, we immediately repel against anything uncomfortable. And so then our life becomes one nothing situation to the next because we don't have the emotional capacity to hold on to anything. When we start to build out the emotional space to hold discomfort in our body and still move forward, that's when we can really start to build something, really become powerful in our creative spirit. But you can ask any athlete, any artist, any entrepreneur, anybody who's done anything significant. It's not easy. And so you have to practice discomfort in your body. Grow the cup so that you can hold more of that energy. Give yourself more time to process it before it gets to that boiling point, before it spews everywhere. You grow the bottle. And this work is the growing the bottle work. It's what gives us the capacity to do whatever we need to do, whatever we want to do. It's what shows us if our desires are pure. It's what allows us to move forward with confidence, clarity, and courage. Because this is not about not being afraid. This is not about never being uncomfortable. It's about being able to have the capacity to be those things and continue to move forward. Our power is in our choice. And if we're somebody who doesn't know how to make a choice, if we are always up in the air about everything, if we're always in a place of indecision, if we're always second guessing ourselves, that's shaky ground to build a life on. And it points to something that we can feel through to find some solid footing. And of course, the other huge manifestation of this work is that when we overcome adversity, when we get good at flexing that muscle, at clearing those hurdles, that's how we win. And that's fun, that's satisfying, that's meaningful. It's how we win in every domain. And it's how we help others win, by modeling winning. And winning is often just being fully at peace in this moment, in this moment, in this moment. So, with that, do you want to send that email? I think I'm feeling pretty balanced. So, I'll call this session, and I appreciate you being here. If you've got any questions about how to incorporate a mindfulness practice into your own life, feel free to leave a comment and we'll start a conversation. Bye.